They said it was a satellite, but no one launched it. They said it was a signal, but it never spoke. For decades it circled the Earth, silent, unclaimed, and impossible. The Pentagon denied it. Astronomers caught glimpses. A NASA camera may have captured it by accident. And every time it was spotted, it disappeared. This story doesn't begin with a launch. It begins with something already in motion. A myth that built itself out of fear, static, and silence. But what if it wasn't a myth at all? What if we've just been looking in the wrong direction? February 10, 1960. US Navy radar tracks a large, silent object in low Earth orbit. That wasn't unusual. This was the Cold War. Satellites were expected. But this one was different. It was flying in polar orbit, from north to south. At the time, no satellite could do that. And even worse, it was flying in retrograde, against the Earth's spin.
Retrograde orbit requires roughly 30% more energy. In 1960, no known launch platform could accomplish it.
The Pentagon scrambled. It wasn't American, it wasn't Russian, and it wasn't explainable. Privately, Defense Department officials were in crisis mode. Grumman Aerospace was ordered to photograph the object. They did, but the photos were never released. Not classified, not redacted, just erased. That's when the name Black Knight began circulating, informally and internally. But here's the thing, this wasn't the first time something strange was in orbit. Nikola Tesla, working in Colorado Springs. His wireless tower starts picking up a signal, repeating pulses, mathematical sequences. Tesla's conclusion was that he wasn't just receiving radio waves, he was receiving a message.
The feeling is constantly growing. That I have been the first to hear the greeting of one planet to another.
The press dismissed it, but Tesla wasn't alone. In 1927, Norwegian engineer Jørgen Holst began noticing something similar. His radio signals would bounce back seconds later, not milliseconds, but seconds. Too slow for normal propagation, too irregular to be atmospheric.
These are now known as long-delayed echoes, LDEs. Still unexplained, still observed by amateur radio operators worldwide.
They tried every theory. Ionospheric bounce? No. Reflection of the moon? No. Equipment fault? They ruled it out. These echoes came back with structure, and some believed intention. By the 1950s, US intelligence agencies quietly began investigating the pattern. In May 1954, Aviation Week ran a curious article. It claimed 2 artificial satellites were already orbiting Earth. This was 3 years before Sputnik. The source was Major Donald Keyhoe, former naval pilot, now a director at NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Area Phenomena. In his book The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, he mentioned, "As soon as I saw the news story, I called Riddell. Well, it was the only way out," he said. "The idea of natural objects suddenly coming in and orbiting is ridiculous, and they know it. However, it will cover up the thing for a while." I had some other questions, but Riddell was tied up. We made a date to meet that evening. That afternoon I learned that Air Force were blaming me for the increase in UFO sightings. You can find everything about his book in the link below. It's a really interesting read. The military obviously denied it, but the pattern was undeniable. Signals in the sky, strange echoes, now a dark object, appearing in an orbit that didn't make sense. And somehow, no one had put it there. If this was a hoax, it was the most well-cited hoax in modern history. Reports came in from 3 continents: New Mexico, France, Sweden, Australia. Even the Harvard-Smithsonian Observatory issued a formal track report. Whatever was up there was real enough for Harvard. And yet, NASA said nothing. No confirmation and no denial. just complete silence. Until 1998. The first space shuttle mission to the International Space Station. On day 5, during the Unity module connection, a series of high-resolution photos was taken, and one showed this. A dark angular object, floating, not tethered, labeled, and not on any official manifest. Of course the image leaked, and then it spread to forums, to message boards on early YouTube. For the first time, the Black Knight had a face. NASA issued a single line. It's a discarded thermal blanket.
Photo ID STS 088-724-66. Label Space Debris. No retrieval mission was attempted. No secondary tracking issued.
And maybe they're right, but it didn't drift, it didn't tumble, it hovered like something that knew we were watching. And maybe we weren't the first to see it, because this doesn't begin in 1998. It begins with a man in orbit, alone. Gordon Cooper, Mercury 9, 1963, a record-setting flight, and mid-orbit, he reported a glowing green object ahead of him. Silent, moving, and unidentified. The ground station confirmed it, radar confirmed it, and even NBC News prepared the story. But when Cooper returned, NASA classified the report, and journalists were warned, don't ask. The official cause, malfunction-induced hallucination, high CO2 levels. But Cooper, he didn't buy it. Hell, I don't buy it either. And once he left NASA, he said so. He told reporters what he saw was real, and he had seen it before. Years earlier, at Edwards Air Force Base, Cooper claimed he and his team saw a saucer-shaped craft land, silent, retractable geared. It hovered, then vanished vertically. No sound and no heat, just gone. And Cooper wasn't alone. Other pilots saw it too, but they didn't file reports, because they knew what happened to those pilots who talked about UFOs. Their careers disappeared faster than the craft.
Cooper later testified before the United Nations, quote, I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets.
He wasn't theorizing, he was logging a flight report. But Cooper wasn't the only expert to see it and lose everything. In 1960, a French astronomer by the name of Jacques Vallée tracked and filmed an unknown satellite in polar orbit from his lab in Paris. He delivered the film to his supervisor. It was seized, erased. The official reason was that the footage was an embarrassment to the institution. Vallée didn't buy it. It haunted him for years and turned him from a skeptic into one of the world's most outspoken voices in UFO research. And the official stories from the time, they didn't just change, they collapsed. In 1995, declassified documents revealed something strange. The Corona Project, a secret Cold War satellite initiative, had been launched under a false name, Discoverer. It was that name, Discoverer 5, used to explain away an unknown object seen in 1960. But Discoverer 5 had failed, and the real mission was surveillance. So the government admitted they made up satellite sightings to cover up secret tech. But that still leaves one question. What were they really trying to cover? Because retrograde orbit in 1960 wasn't even possible for US rockets, and no one, not even the Soviets, claimed to launch anything that fit. Cooper died in 2004, decorated, respected, and unshaken. He never recanted.
The future of, mankind perhaps meeting someone else in space or here. So, as I understand it, in 1951 or 1950, you had a couple days of observing something usual flying over Europe?
Yes. We had some kind of craft flying overhead at pretty good altitude and flying the same kind of formation we fly in our fighters.
Were they planes? I mean, what?
Well, it turns out they didn't have wings. They were saucer-shaped, and we never could get as high or as fast as they were, so to really positively identify them, but they were metallic looking and saucer in shape. And they can do a few maneuvers that we couldn't do in an airplane.
What maneuvers are that?
Like just horizontally displace themselves rapidly. Be flying along and just move over rapidly.
And how fast were they moving?
Well, faster than we could in F-86s. So they were capable of accelerating very readily out, well past Mach 1 anyway.
Did you think they were experimental craft, or what was your initial thought?
Well, not knowing what was going on in Russia at the time, we were really at the height of the Cold War. We had no idea what Russia was doing, and we had no way of knowing whether they were Russian aircraft or whether they were something else.
After you were debriefed, what happened? Did they believe you, or?
It didn't matter whether they believed us or not. The report went on, I assume, was forwarded on to Washington.
If you could speculate, I mean, on what you saw and what they were doing, what would your, I guess, opinion be?
There were a number of extraterrestrial vehicles out there cruising around.
After 1998, the object vanished from military logs. No retrieval mission, orbital tag, and no public follow-up. But online, it exploded. From message boards to fringe forums and deep dive documentaries like this one, every photograph, every echo, every ambiguous press code became fuel. Alien probe, ancient sentinel, a machine from before the flood, a cosmic archivist left in orbit like a black box. But here's the part most people miss. There's no single Black Knight satellite. There never was. It's a mosaic, a collage of anomalies stitched across decades. 1928, long-delayed echoes. 1960, a retrograde object tracked, then hidden. 1998, STS-88 footage, Gordon Cooper's silent testimony. Each fragment contradicts the last, yet somehow they form a whole. Because sometimes belief doesn't come from proof, it comes from pattern.
Pattern recognition is a cognitive survival trait. In uncertainty, the brain forms structure. It invents a cause, meaning, myth.
We see faces in clouds, hear whispers in static, and when a satellite moves the wrong way, we see purpose. And sometimes, maybe we're not wrong. In 1973, Scottish researcher Duncan Lunan reanalyzed those long-delayed radio echoes. He plotted them, reversed ordered the signal sequence. What he found was a map, pointing to Epsilon Boötis, a binary star system 200 light-years away from the Earth. The decoded message: our home is the sixth planet, our probe is near Arcturus, this is a reply. This wasn't just a ghost signal, it had coordinates, a beacon, or a breadcrumb. And if it was real, then someone else answered it first. Long before we had satellites, we had SkyMets. The Dogon of Mali spoke of Sirius B, an invisible star accurately described before telescopes existed. Vedic texts described objects beyond the reach of fire, possibly low orbit, and Sumerian tablets tell of gods descending from craft stationed in the heavens.
Modern orbital mechanics confirm Sirius B's characteristics. The Dogon knew them centuries earlier. Their source remains unknown.
Myths are memory, encrypted in poetry. Maybe we've been describing the Black Knight for a very, very long time. So maybe the Black Knight isn't a probe. Maybe it's a mirror, held up to a species desperate not to be alone, or terrified that we are. It doesn't matter if it's alien, ancient, or just misunderstood. What matters is that it returned a signal, not to our antennas, but to something older, our need to believe. And every time it vanishes from the sky, it stays alive in our stories. Because sometimes the thing we're watching for is watching back. If you're still here, you're one of us. Subscribe and share the vault. And if this left you wondering what else could be hiding in plain sight, you need to see what's been happening inside the Alaskan Triangle. And remember, Not every mystery wants to be solved. Some just want to be heard. Truth, fiction, you decide.